Welcome back, everyone. Today we're going to put the muzzle on our little bear. If you remember from video number 1, we prepared the muzzle. We did the basting stitch and did the stuffing, and I left the thread on the muzzle. I didn't cut that thread. I'm going to use this thread today to attach the muzzle to my little bear. Now the muzzle is a bit rounded. This is a pretty good example, but I found that sometimes they can be a little bit more round. Like this one turned out a bit more round. So you want to try your best to figure out which way is a bit more oblong, or kind of shape it so that it's a bit more oblong. So that one's a bit more oblong shape now. So this one actually looks pretty good. So what I'm going to do is place it on my bear head here. Make sure you have the front. So make sure your little pleats are in the front on the ears. And you want to center it between the two darts. So there's the end of one dart here and the end of the other dart here. So I want to kind of place that in between and just a little bit downward, about right there. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start my thread and I'm going to do a ladder stitch around the bear here. So I'm going to attach it to the bear first, and then I'm going to go up above my basting stitch about 2 or 3 millimeters. And I'm using a double strand of thread here, so you want this to be nice and secure. It's the same color as my bear fabric. And you just want to go around making tiny stitches. Sorry, little bear arm, get out of the way. Making tiny stitches and pulling that ladder stitch really tight. Now, if you haven't done ladder stitch before, please let me know and I can do a quick demonstration of that as well. It's very handy for doing seams, and it makes a virtually invisible stitch. If any of you took Amy's class on hexies, she talked about ladder stitch in that class. Just making sure my nose is okay. You can go around once, and then if you find that you've missed a couple areas or you want to tack it a bit more, you can put the thread through and just keep adjusting until you get the nose how you like it. You can see the part that I've done here. It's pretty good. You do get a tiny bit of wavering. I can go back and fix that, just make my stitches smaller. I'm going to keep going around and I will be back when I'm finished. All right, I finished going around with the ladder stitch, and the key with this stitch is if you do 2 or 3 stitches a bit loose and then you pull the thread, it makes it really tight and the stitches become practically invisible. So my bear nose is on and it looks pretty good, but this is partly where you can start doing some fine-tuning and adjustments to see what your bear is going to look like when he's finally finished. This guy, I think maybe I want to have a bit more of a pointy nose, and you just kind of squish that little nose piece and you play with his head a little bit, and I think that's more like what I want it to be. He looks pretty good. I got it pretty even there too. So to finish your thread, I'm going to do one little stitch underneath here, and I've got my loop. I'm going to go through this one twice and pull it, and then I'm going to take my needle and I'm going to poke it right through the back of his head like that. And then it should pull really tightly in, and the knot should almost disappear into the felt. And then on the back here I can cut the thread with the scissors I don't have. There we go. There we go. There is my little bear muzzle. And now what I'm going to do is his nose. I saved the eyes for last because that's my favorite part. Okay, so I have threaded up some black DMC double strand, and I'm going to sew his nose and mouth. Now this is where your character of your bear will really start coming through. In your kit, you can choose a choice of black thread, or there's some darker brown thread. So it depends on the look of your bear. I like the black eyes, black nose and mouth, so I'm gonna do black. So I'm going to go in from the side here, and I think I kind of want his nose to be right there, kind of like that. I make the stitch a little wider because as soon as you pull it tight, it will get shorter, and then his nose will kind of sort of poke out a little bit. So I'm going to go right into the middle of his nose from the side here. And if I can do that, let's try from up here. There we go. You can use a little longer of a needle. I have a pretty short needle here. It's about right there. Okay. So pull the thread through, and I'm going to leave a little tail. We'll cut that off after. And because the nose is going to be stitched right here, I'm going to make a couple of small tacking stitches to hold the thread, like that. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to reestablish where I'm going to put the nose, like that. And I'm going to just pull it through, and you just kind of make a loop, so you're going in where you pulled the thread through, and I'm going to give it a pull. You see kind of what that does is it makes a little pointy nose, and it's the stitches are quite narrow, so have narrowed quite a bit. So I'm going to keep going through the same spot about 3 or 4 times, maybe moving down a tiny bit just to make the nose a bit wider. And another time, a little bit lower. You can go as much as you want on this. You can see how his cute little nose is coming there. There's a little bit of white spot sticking through, so tuck that in, put another stitch in there. You can kind of guide the thread with your finger. There we go. So have a look and see what you think. Not too bad. I think I'm going to make it a little bit wider and maybe a bit further down on the right side. You can kind of adjust your thread to go where you like it. And that's all it is. It's just a few little satin stitches, I guess, across. One more here, I think. There we go. I think that's good. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my thread, and I'm just going to sort of insert it in between the layers of my stitching here. And I'm going to go straight down and make his little muzzly nose piece, or whatever you want to call it. Not even sure what you call that. Top of his nose. So I'm going to go down that's about 5 or 6 millimeters. Straight down like that. There's his little nose all done. And then I'm going to go up, right sort of underneath the stitching of the nose. And I'm going to go back down and come out in the exact same spot as I went down. Right there. Just come out in the exact same spot. So you're making a little loop. And then you pull that down. There. I'm just going to cut this thread off the top of his head now because we don't need that anymore. And then there's a couple little, I don't know, stuffing stitches or whatever sitting under his nose there. Take those out. So now we're going to go to the side. So this is where you can decide what your bear looks like. If you want to have him be smile, you do a stitch here, and then you do a smaller stitch going upward, so he's got a bit of a smile. If you just want him to have a frown or a straight mouth, you can do that too. My other bears, I did a straight mouth. So this one, I'll try a happier looking mouth. So I'm going to go about just maybe a little bit longer than the width of his nose on either side. And I'm going to pull that through the one side. And then I'm going to go back into the center, and I'm going to go make a loop like I did with the other nose, the upright piece, and make another loop. Now I have a terse bear. It's pretty cute though. But this one I think I'm going to try to do a little happy face. So I'm going to do a tiny stitch just a little bit on the upright, and I'm going to loop that all the way over to the other side of his mouth. And if I like it well enough, I will leave it. If not, I will take it out and redo it. Maybe not quite big enough of a stitch. So I'm going to take that out. It's not bad, but it doesn't have to be a big stitch, but this could be just a tiny bit bigger. So I'll pull this out. I'm going to do it one more time. All right, so I've got my needle rethreaded here, and I'm going to attempt the little smiley bear face, attempt number 2. So I'm just going to make that one stitch a tiny bit longer and go through on the other side here, right on the other side of his mouth, pull through and see, that's better. Oh, look at that, he's smiling now. And I'm going to do the same stitch on the other side here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to come through this one right here, right on the cross on his little mouth, below the stitch, like that. Let's see how I do there. Oh yeah, pretty good, not bad. It's maybe a little bit longer on one side than the other, but it adds personality to my little bear friend. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go over this straight stitch here, and I'm going to come up into the nose again, like that. And if you want, you can make the nose a bit bigger here, straighten out a little bit, but I'm pretty happy with my nose piece. Nose, I'm just going to take it to the side. And I'm going to make a very small stitch, sort of right at the edge of the black. So you want to grab the stitch, just maybe one strand or 2 strands. And then I'm going to make a little loop stitch and knot it. And then we're going to shove the needle back through into the back of the head, or wherever you can get it to go. I got a pretty short needle here, so you could use a longer one if you want to, but like that. I like the smaller needles for doing the nose because you get a better precision. Oops, there's the eyes rolling around. And then just give this a bit of a pull and cut your thread. And if you pull it, the thread will actually disappear right into the bear's head. So I'm just gonna give him a little shape here, squish away a little bit. And there's my bear nose and mouth. All right, on to the bear eyes. So I have threaded another needle here. I've used a longer embroidery needle. You can use a milliner's needle as well. The longer ones work really good. If you have dull needles, they work as well. The most important thing is you want to make sure they fit. The eye fits through the bead. These beads have quite a large hole, so it should be good. So what I need to do now is decide where my eyes are going to be on my bear. Here's my 2 darts. So I think I might like to try to put these eyes about the same height as the darts, and maybe just a little bit on the inside of them, like that. So this is a good way you can practice with your bear here. Slide them on each end of the needle, like that, just to give you an idea about what your bear might look like. So I think that's a bit wide. So we're going to go a little on the narrower side here. See what that looks like now. There's one. This way you can decide how you want your bear to look. He looks studious. That's pretty good, I think. So I'm going to go with that. So, oops, keep that in mind. I'm going to put my finger there. Now I'm going to start my needle, do the same thing. Just go back into the head and up into the hole where I want my first eye, and leave a tiny bit of a tail. We'll cut that off later. And you want to make a tiny tacking stitch here in the felt. You don't want to make it too big because you don't want that to be seen over the eye. Start up your eye and stick that in, and then we're going to come out on the other side like that. And we'll adjust the eyeball here. Now when you pull, this is again where your little bear shape is going to be. So I've also adjusted the beads so that the hole is on the side, and I think I like that better. So let's put the other eye on. We're going to make another little stitch underneath here, and then I'm going to thread back, and in the process I'm going to grab some of the roving, and this is where you can do a lot of really nice shaping with the face. You see how it's starting to become a bit more elongated around the top of the head here. And you can kind of maneuver or manipulate the roving quite nicely inside the head with the needle, and then just give that a pull. There, look at that. That's pretty good. Make sure my needles are straight. And then we're going to go underneath the bead on this side, and then maybe grab some more of the roving, and then come up through the hole on this side. You kind of do this, go back and forth between, like, put the needle between the, thread the needle back and forth between the beads a few times. It can be a bit tricky. Depends on how much roving you catch underneath there. The longer needle might help, but you want to do this about 2 or 3 times and give that a bit of a pull. You can see how the eyes are kind of inset into the head a little bit. If you like them a little further apart, you can do them further apart, a little further up on the head. Even now, like, I find this eye here is on the lower side, so I'm going to take my thread and I'm going to put it on the top and thread it through like that. So once you've gone through about 3 times, you think you're good. Your bear is pretty much done. We're going to tie off this thread. We're going to go under here, under the bead, and we're going to try to catch a little bit of the thread and felt. We're not going to do a knot because it'll show. We're just going to do a couple of small tacking stitches. And then we're going to just put the thread through the back of the head or wherever and trim them off. I'll just do that. Trim my threads. Oop, didn't pull. There we go. Give it a pull, trim. They just pop right into the head, disappear. You don't see those anymore. And do a little shaping. Again, just kind of mush his head around a little bit. Sorry, my table's wobbling and my camera is too. I think my little fella is done. Here's my bear. He's looking pretty cute, got a personality. His nose is nicely sticking out and his eyes have got a cute little indent there. And now I need to make him his little scarf and hat. Stay tuned for the next video on how to do some crocheting.